The Notes of Helen Schuckman, A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles, the Shorthand Notes of Helen Schuckman, um, text, text volume. So reading from that, stimuli of all kinds are identified through perception. You perceive the stimulus and behave accordingly. It follows then that as ye perceive, so will ye behave. I raise the point that biblical language is hardly behavioristic terminology. Answer: no, but they needn't be out of accord with each other either. Okay, so I think this is in A Course in Miracles, the CE version, complete edition by Robert Perry. In the notes, at least the first part here about stimuli. Stimuli of all kinds are identified through perception. Okay, stimuli of all kinds, whether it's the God mind or the ego mind, stimuli of all kinds are identified through perception. You perceive the stimulus and behave accordingly. So if it's something of the ego in terms of thought, belief, it's going to lead to remorse, sadness, disappointment, or some other negative emotion. If it's according to the God mind, if it's perceived from the God mind, the Jesus-like mind, the result is always supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect goodness. So you perceive the stimulus and behave accordingly. So from your thoughts come your words and your actions. So it starts with the mind, starts with belief, starts with thoughts. It follows then that as ye perceive, so will ye behave. Probably in A Course in Miracles, but in any event, that's the idea to me. I raise the point that biblical language is hardly behavioristic terminology. Answer: no, but they needn't be out of accord with each other either. Maybe in Robert Perry's book there, what I just read, but um, uh, this book is about integration of everything: mind, body, spirit, physical actions, behavior, thoughts, beliefs, everything. The integration of everything in terms of perfect peace, perfect joy, supremely happy, perfect goodness, perfect love, perfect freedom. There's a lot of phrases in the book start with the word perfect, and then there's another word after it. Perfect blamelessness is used in this book. So nothing should be out of accord with anything in terms of the God mind. Perfect integration, perfect peace, joy, strength, love, goodness, moment to moment, every thought, word, action leading to behavior, never any doubt, remorse, anxiety, disappointment, sadness, loneliness, or any other negative emotion to any degree, ever, moment to moment. Reading from A Course in Miracles, the notes of Helen Schuckman. Consider the golden rule again. You are asked to behave towards others as you would have them behave toward you. This means that the perception of both must be accurate. Since the golden rule is the order for appropriate behavior, you can't behave appropriately unless you perceive accurately, because appropriate behavior depends on lack of level confusion. The presence of level confusion always results in variable reality testing and hence variability in behavioral appropriateness. So very likely in Robert Perry's book, the CE version here in the notes, maybe some of it might be in the FIP, maybe not, but okay. So reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, consider the golden rule again. You are asked to behave towards others as you would have them behave toward you. So, the golden rule is absolutely meaningless. If I want to do something that's not joy, peace, strength, goodness, if I want to do something that's not that, and I want someone else to do that with me, that is not ACIM. ACIM is always saying, Find what you know is perfect sinlessness, holiness, purity, sinless, holy, pure. Find what that is for yourself with every thought leading to words and behavior. And how do you know that? You know that because you're supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy. So you know you're in God's will. And then that's all you're looking for in others. That's all you're expecting from others. That's all you see in others is their perfect capital S self. For me, for me, sinless, pure, and holy is also the same thing as moral, virtuous, righteous. But ACIM never uses the word moral. It just doesn't do it. But for me, it's the same thing. So um, right. So reading from the Notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM, this means that the perception of both must be accurate, since the golden rule is the order for appropriate behavior. The golden rule is meaningless. As far as you know, if I want to do something that's not perfect peace, joy, strength, it's and I want somebody else to do that with me or for me or in some other way, whatever. No, it's so the golden rule is meaningless. But anyway, you can't behave appropriately unless you perceive accurately. So perceiving accurately again. Am I filled with Jesus like peace, strength, joy, goodness, love, beauty, wisdom, perfection, dot, dot, dot? Yes or no? Am I supremely happy? Phenomenal tranquility. No thought opposes any other thought. That's a sentence from the teacher's manual. No thought opposes any other thought. Nothing you say is contradicted by what you think, let alone by what you do. Nothing you say is even contradicted by what you think in terms of perfect sinlessness, purity, holiness. So conflict free, absolutely 100% conflict free. That's when your mind can perceive accurately. So that's the goal. Because appropriate behavior depends on lack of level confusion. There's only two levels. The spirit mind is one level, physicality is the other level. So, body appetites are blocks to the love of God, any body appetite. Miracle impulses are blocked by physical impulses. Just that's simply a fact, especially concerning sex and especially that one, but also anything else, but body appetites are a block to the intense and burning love of God that's talked about in this book. I mean, that's what has to be felt, known, developed, experienced. There's a sentence in the book. It says, beneath the ego's foundation, you have an intense and burning love of God and his for you. You know of your intense and burning love of God and his for you. So God is the first person of the Trinity. And um, body appetites are blocks to knowing that perfect love of God. In other words, I'm going for a body appetite. That's where I'm finding my joy, followed by remorse. But that's where I'm going for my joy instead of my, love of God, my knowing of God, my and God's love for me. Instead of that, I'm going for a body appetite. Also called an idol. There's plenty of sentences in this book about the whole topic. All right, so reading from A Course in Miracles, the notes of Helen Schuckman, the presence of level confusion always results in variable reality testing, um, uh, and hence variability in behavioral appropriateness. So, the ego way is go for a body appetite, experience, I don't know, endorphin rush or whatever, and then go to remorse, and then go back to body appetite, experience endorphin rush, and then go back to back and forth, back and forth. So that's variable reality testing. Um, so no, so and hence variability in behavioral appropriateness. So I mean, I could say simply that in this book there's a lot of sentences very direct about sex. The only valid use of sex is procreation. The only valid use of sex is procreation. Sex relations are intended for children. There are very deliberate sentences about that subject. So that's the simple truth. Either I live in it or I do not. And if I live in it, I know of perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect goodness. If I do not live in it, there is remorse, disappointment, sadness to whatever level. So, um, reading from the Notes of Helen Schuckman, A Course in Miracles, all forms of self-image debasement are fundamental perceptual distortions. They inevitably produce either self-contempt or projection, and usually both. Ah, self-debasement. I suppose, I know what that means from a dictionary definition of debase or debasement, but still, the real capital S self of ourselves, the real truth of ourselves is we are always moment to moment in perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect love, perfect patience. There's a sentence in the book, it says only infinite patience produces immediate effects. So I have to have infinite patience about everything in terms of morality, goodness, love, virtuousness, sinlessness, holiness, purity, infinite patience about that. And if I take into consideration the understanding that there are cycles of eternity, we are in a cycle of eternity, but that's all there is cycles of eternity. So whatever it is that I want to do that is a good thing in any way, I will do it somewhere in eternity. I mean, that's a big topic that I'm saying there, but in everyone else, another idea in ACIM, in everyone else, you see yourself. So God himself, the first person of the Trinity, although he does know of himself as an individual, distinct, personal being, he does. But he's also intimately involved with the personality of every being in existence, whether it's a spirit being of some higher kind than angels, spirit beings, humans. God knows himself as that person also. So, and that's how we're supposed to be. I, you, or anybody could be anybody in that sense. From an eternal, from a cycles of eternity standpoint, I, you, or anybody could be anybody. And the goal, of course, in being a person is to be perfect, Jesus like, perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect goodness, perfect patience, perfect all of it, moment to moment. That's the goal. So, um, so as far as what it's saying here, ACIM, they inevitably produce either self-contempt or projection, and usually both. So, ACIM, very, very lot of discussion in this book about not having resentments of any kind towards anyone, never having the slightest anger, zero anger, no righteous indignation, no forms of anger ever. That would be, um, that would be what it is. But, projection, blaming someone else, never, not for a moment, ever, never, zero. Self contempt in terms of feeling anything less than perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect love, perfect patience, perfect kindness, perfect tenderness, perfect goodness. Anything other than that, never. So that's what it would be to me in terms of a subject. Reading from the Notes of Helen Schuckman, A Course in Miracles. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of the same family, as you perceive both, so will you behave toward both. The way to perceive for golden rule behavior is to look out from perception of your own holiness and perceive the holiness of others. Well, equality is an important subject in this book, talked about a lot. You know, I, you, or anyone are perfectly equal in every way. Men and women are perfectly equal. The bodies of men and women are perfectly equal. Everything is perfectly equal in every way. If for, the book says, if you see someone not as your perfect equal, competition has entered, and competition, I believe the sentence says something like, competition is the reason for all your conflicts. There's a sentence like that in the book. But in any event, everyone is perfectly equal. God alone, God, the first person of the Trinity, is the only being to whom worship or awe is given. Absolutely nobody else. Every other being in existence, as an individual, mind, spirit, whether they're a spirit being, an angel, or a human being, um, um, everyone else is perfectly equal. From the second person of the Trinity to everyone and anyone, all humans, everyone is perfectly equal. Lots of sentences in the book about that. Um, the way to perceive for golden rule behavior is to look out from the perception of your own holiness and perceive the holiness of others. So again, Jesus of Nazareth, this is what he did. This is what I want to do. This is the goal. Establish for yourself what is perfect sinlessness, purity, and holiness in ACIM terms, or the same thing is morality, virtuousness, righteousness, but establish that for yourself in every way. Sex, food, whatever, everything and everything we do as human beings, whether it's behavior, whether it's thoughts, spiritual beliefs, all of it, moment to moment, establish what you know is perfect holiness, love, goodness, etc., in every way, moment to moment, so that you're living in nothing but a state of supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect freedom, perfect goodness, perfect kindness, perfect tenderness, perfect humility, etc., living that way in every way, moment to moment. And that's all you are, and that's all you're looking for in others. All right, reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, Course in Miracles. Bill and you need considerable clarification of the channel role. Look carefully at somebody here. She is working miracles every day because she knows who she is. I emphasize again that your tendency to forget names is not hostility, but a fear of involvement or recognition. You had misinterpreted human encounters as opportunities for magic rather than for miracles, and so you tried to protect the name. This is a very ancient and primitive way of trying to protect a person. Okay, so I don't think maybe a sentence or two here is actually in maybe Robert Perry's version, the CE version of A Course in Miracles. Probably none of this in the FIP. I mean, as far as like a sentence here, she is working miracles every day because she knows who she is. I mean, every moment, moment to moment, should be filled with miracles, miracles, that which is perfectly loving, joyous, strong, tender, kind, thought, word, and action, miracles, moment to moment. And, miracles. So Jesus of Nazareth, he had that type of a mind, supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy, moment to moment in his public mission. And he also did real physical miracles along with that. So, the word miracles encompasses all those ideas. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM, I emphasize again that your tendency to forget names is not hostility, but a fear of involvement or recognition. I don't really think that's an ACIM. Anyway, moving on. You had misinterpreted human encounters as opportunity. It might be, but anyway, you had misinterpreted human encounters as opportunities for magic rather than for miracles, and so you tried to protect the name. I mean, for me, that may or may not be in the book, but magic, is just another word for ego stuff. Anything that's not perfect peace, joy, strength, goodness, kindness, tenderness. Miracles is a word for that which is perfect peace, joy, tranquility, kindness, strength, love in every way, thought, word, and action. This is a very ancient and primitive way. I don't think that's in the book either. All right. So reading from A Course in Miracles, the Notes of Helen Schuckman. So it says here, note the very old Jewish practice of changing the name of a person who is very ill. So when the list is given to the angel of death, the person with that name will not be found. I think that sentence is in Robert Perry's book, maybe. It, I mean, the Urantia book, Urantia, goes into a tremendous amount of information about early man. I mean, if it's going to talk about early man, primitive ways that things are done, there's a tremendous amount of information in the Urantia book, Urantia, about all that type of subject in terms of these couple of paragraphs here that I just read. Um, and things about family names. I'm pretty sure that subject is in there to whatever degree. Just, you know, anyway, I don't have anything to say about it necessarily. Um, so, reading from A Course in Miracles, uh, the Notes of Helen Schuckman. This is a good example of the curiously literal regression which can occur in very bright people when they become afraid. You and Bill both do it. Actually, it is a device closely related to the phobia in the sense that they narrow fear to a simple aspect of a much larger problem in order to enable them to avoid it. The first part here might be in Robert Perry's book, the literal regression, which can occur in very bright people when they become afraid. So ACIM certainly, there are sentences about, this book is not about knowledge in the terms of, just knowing things. I think I heard a sentence somewhere the other day, a person is more than their body and their intellect. They are a soul. So, um, not necessarily exactly ACIM, but, um, uh, the book says definitely more than once, I'm pretty sure, the goal of ACIM is peace, not knowledge. Like, but peace, having peace of mind, is a prerequisite to gaining what real knowledge is. Jesus of Nazareth, in his public mission, he had a tremendous amount of knowledge, like, straight up knowledge about spiritual truths, how to do things physically. I mean, he had a tremendous amount of knowledge about, how to stay in perfect peace, joy, strength, regardless of what you're doing physically, what you're thinking about spiritually, believing spiritually. He had a tremendous amount of knowledge about that. So knowledge comes from establishing perfect God, the peace of God which passes understanding, tranquility. Establishing that brings knowledge, but the goal of the book is peace. More than one sentence, I'm pretty sure about that. I know of at least one sentence, pretty much says that verbatim. Um, so nothing is about intellect in the sense that the goal is living the will of God perfectly moment to moment, regardless of intellect. I would say that much. That's kind of like just me saying that, not exactly from ACIM, but narrow fear to the simplest. Okay, so narrow fear to a reading from A Course in Miracles, the Notes of Helen Schuckman. Narrow fear to a simple aspect of a much larger problem in order to enable them to avoid it. Well, I would say the the topic right there to me is you can change your mind, and you have to actively try to change your mind. If I'm in temptation about something that I know is ego and not perfect peace, perfect joy, supremely happy, rise above it in the moment, right? Immediately as I'm thinking it, rise above it in the moment. You don't have to stay with the same line of thought that you're on. And ACIM is saying do not stay on that same line of thought. If it's not perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, rise above it, change your belief in the moment. Change the way you're thinking in the moment. Like right then and there, literally change your mind in terms of how it's thinking. This is hard to take seriously because we don't see the mind. It's a very automatic process. But that's to me is the idea of stop thinking the way I'm thinking in any given moment, change the way I'm thinking in any given moment. Rise above that thought to the real thought, the true thought about any subject. If I'm in temptation, think about what is the truth about that situation in terms of the real truth about that situation, the principles in ACIM about anything. Think that, live that, be that, change your mind in a moment. I want to change my mind in a moment. Changing the mind in any given moment, there are plenty of ways to think rather than going down the same typical way of thinking in any given moment. There are other places to go in terms of literally changing how you're thinking in the moment. To me, this is an important subject. The average person does not do that. I mean, the ego mind simply just keeps thinking along the ways it's thinking and could care less about being supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy, etc. Um, so that's the whole problem to me with narrow fear to a simple aspect of a much larger problem. So staying focused on something that's egoic, even if it's changing to some degree, like, from thinking about something or doing something pleasurable in one way, which results in remorse, try it a different way. It still results in remorse. So it's not about trying all the different roads of egoic thinking or the world's roads. It's a fairly big subject, but that's what I would say about it. Um, and the what's being avoided is living in the Christ mind, living in the Jesus mind. Perfect peace, perfect tranquility, perfect freedom, perfect goodness, perfect strength, perfect love, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way to be.